going to talk about a subject that in the 30 plus years that I have been preaching, which seems like a long time when you say it that way, I don't think I've ever have devoted an entire sermon to this subject in 30 plus years. And so this will be somewhat different than we normally experience on a Sunday morning as far as outlines go. You don't have 3 points and all those things, although you do have some things to fill in your notes. So you pray for me today. I don't know, the Lord has put this on my heart weeks ago, and I've kind of wrestled with Him. If you're a minister, you know what it's like to wrestle with the Lord and not want to do what He wants you to do sometimes and say what you think you need to say. But you pray for me today. I'll say it the way the Lord wants me to say it and needs me to say it. Today, I'm simply going to talk about defending the helpless. Defending the helpless. After 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, the children of Israel have come to the edge of the promised land. They have camped on the east side of the Jordan River. Soon they will cross that Jordan River and enter the promised land under the leadership of Joshua. And they will take possession of the land the Lord has promised that would be theirs and there for their generations to come. Moses, who had led them for 40 years, will not be going into the promised land with them. Now he is an old man and he is near death. He has brought them out of Egypt. He has shepherded them through the long years in the Sinai desert. And God has already told him he cannot go with them into the promised land. He has simply gone as far as he can go. With that in mind, Moses delivers his farewell address to his people. And in this address, he reviews their history to that point. He repeats the 10 Commandments. He gives them some further laws and instructions that they'll need to know. He exhorts them to obey the Lord, and when they finally cross the Jordan River and enter their homeland, he encourages them to never forget the God who brought them there. And in a few simple words, he crystallizes the choice that is before them. This is what Moses said. This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live and that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. His words are simple. Choose life. Choose life that you may live, or choose death and you will die. It is a decision that is made over and over again in our lives. Will we serve the Lord and live, or will we turn away from him and die? Sooner or later, we all make a similar decision. Not every day that we live is equally momentous. Not every decision we make determines our destiny. But there are some decisions that we do make that do determine our destiny and set our life in a direction. Some choices are so clear that they set our direction for an entire generation. I do not think that I am alone this morning in thinking that the election in our nation on Tuesday is such a moment for our nation. Not only would this be most likely one of the closest elections in the last 40 years, it may be one of the most expensive, certainly one of the dirtiest and ugliest that we've ever seen. But I believe that more than all of those things, it will be the most important election in the last 100 years. Whoever occupies the Oval Office for the next 4 years will make decisions during that time frame that will guide our nation far into the future. It's not just about who the president is. It's about who the other elected leaders are in our Congress and Senate and local elections. And also it means that this person will nominate and most likely have put in place at least 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices who will set laws and precedent that will affect this land for generations to come. And so which way will we go? How should we make up our minds? I have two exhortations for you today. First, you should vote. If you are an American citizen and if you're registered to vote, make sure you go to the polls on Election Day. And I'm going to make a bold statement. I told my wife I was going to say this today. If you are registered and you can vote and you need a ride, you call me on Tuesday and I will personally come and pick you up and take you to vote. Now, it's not just to have lunch with you and have a good time with me, but if you need a way to get there, we will make sure you get there to vote. I cannot and I will not tell you how to vote. I do not believe in endorsing candidates from the pulpit, but we do take stands regarding moral issues based on what the Bible says. I urge you this week, those of you who will vote, to vote your Christian convictions with them firmly in view when you go to the polling station. Second, I encourage you to pray about this election. Why do you think we're spending 3 days in prayer and fasting? We encourage you to pray about this election. Why do I want you here at 4 o'clock today? I want you to join with us and pray together about this election. Pray about it. Ask God to give the spirit of discernment to our nation, remembering that the Word of God is still true when it says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Politicians have their polls. They have their big rallies. They have slick ads. But we have the Lord who has given us the spirit of prayer and the spirit of discernment. Let's use the gift of prayer to cry out to God for help in these critical hours. As we think about our election, I want us to look at the words of Pope John Paul II, who said, there is a paradox that on the one hand, the need to respect human rights is vigorously affirmed, while on the other hand, the most basic of them all, the right to life, is denied. Pope John Paul II was right, and we could say it even stronger today. To speak of human rights without protecting unborn human rights is hypocrisy. Our own Declaration of Independence declares that certain truths are self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator. Who is our Creator? Our Creator is a source that is higher in truth than the Supreme Court of the United States. He is the Creator of the universe. He's the ultimate truth, with certain unalienable rights. What does that mean? These are rights given by God that man and law cannot take away from us. And what are those rights? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Surely the first, which is life, is the most important. If the right to life is denied, then liberty and the pursuit of happiness cannot exist. To speak of human rights without protecting unborn human rights is hypocrisy. Y'all pray for me today. Several years ago, Pastor John Piper, one of my favorite ministers, wrote an article in Word magazine that addressed the primary complaints made against pro-life voters who consider abortion a make or break it issue in deciding on how they will vote. Many people think it is wrong to be a single issue voter. They argue that you should consider all of the issues in a larger context and then make up your mind. And while that sounds reasonable on one level, Piper says this about that. Most of us approach various candidates by asking, what are their qualifications for office? That's not always the best way to proceed. Sometimes we should ask, what, if anything, disqualifies this person from office? That is, what positions does that person hold that are so wrong-headed that I will not vote for him no matter what he does or doesn't believe? Obviously, these disqualifying issues have to be things of major importance that rule out a candidate for further consideration. John Piper points out that being pro-life is good, but it doesn't necessarily qualify a person to be a congressman or a senator or even a president. But when we look at the flip side of that principle, we see it more clearly. If a candidate says, I'm running on a platform that supports bribery as a matter of public policy, we would say that that person is disqualified from public office no matter what else they believe. Or to take a more serious issue, suppose the candidate says that they believe rape isn't so bad and that we should repeal all of the rape laws in our nation. Would you vote for such a person as that? Well, of course, I hope you would not vote for a person like that, and neither would I. What if a candidate openly claimed to be racist and said that black people should be denied the right to vote and that they believe that slavery should be legal in America? Would you vote for that person? And what if he said, but I'm racist and I don't think it's wrong to enslave black people, but I am pro-life? Would I vote for that person? No, I would not vote for that person because his stance on racism cancels him out and he is disqualified, even though he may be pro-life. Piper continues, so it is with politics. You have to decide what those issues are for you. What do you think disqualifies a person from holding public office? He says, I believe that the endorsement of the right to kill unborn children disqualifies a person from any position of public office. It's simply the same as saying that the endorsement of racism, fraud, or bribery would disqualify him, except that child killing is more serious than these. Jesus spoke to us in Matthew 18 and said, whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to sin. Such things must come, but woe to the man through whom they come. Those who deliberately hurt little children will someday face a terrible judgment from the Lord. But on the positive side, we find that God takes personal responsibility for the unborn in Psalm 139. The writer said it this way, for you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. This is one of the strongest statements of God's prenatal care in the entire Bible. How much does he know about the unborn baby growing in the womb? The Bible tells us he knows everything about that baby growing in the womb. Like a skillful weaver, God takes the tiny hands and legs and he joins them to the body. He forms a heart and then he sets it to beating. He watches over the thumb to make sure it finds the mouth. Piper points out that there are laws against intentionally maiming dogs and cats, and that there are laws that protect a wide range of endangered species. But what about the unborn? Piper writes, an 8-week-old human fetus has a beating heart, an EKG, brain waves, thumb sucking, pain sensitivity, finger grasping, the genetic humanity. But under our present laws, it's not a human person with rights under the 14th Amendment, which says that no state shall deprive any person of life without due process of law. Piper says, well, I wondered if the unborn do not qualify as persons. It seems that they could at least qualify as animals, say a dog, or at least a cat. Why is it legal to maim, mutilate, and kill a pain-sensitive, unborn human being, but not an animal? Over the years, our country has debated the ideas of parental notification, the morning after pill, and even the monstrosity known as partial birth abortion. That last term describes a gruesome medical procedure in which a late-term pregnancy, one where the baby would most likely survive on its own outside of the womb, is ended by a doctor who partially delivers the unborn baby. Using various implements, he punctures the skull and evacuates the contents. Then the dead baby is delivered and the body is discarded. Since Roe versus Wade became the law of the land in 1973, well over 40 million legal abortions have been performed in America. Think about this. Today in our nation, a 17-year-old girl may not buy cigarettes or alcohol. She cannot go to an X-rated movie. But in many states around this nation, she can have an abortion without parental consent. John Noonan, professor at the University of California, notes that under present law, human life has less protection in the United States than in any country in the Western world. In the words of C. Everett Koop, there are quotas on whales and porpoises, but it is always open season on unborn babies. Think about the absurdity of this. If you were to destroy an egg of a bald eagle, you could be fined $5,000 and face up to 3 years in jail. But if you destroy an unborn baby, it only costs you, on average, about $750 to have that procedure done. And here's the sad truth. The most dangerous place in America is not in some inner city. It is inside the mother's womb. Based on abortion statistics, you have a 1 in 3 chance of not making it out alive. I realize this morning that there may be some objections to what I'm saying. And I realize that some of you sitting here this morning would rather not hear this kind of talk in church or even hear a sermon like this. But here's my answer today. There are always other churches that you can attend. There are. Others will say to me, stick to the gospel, Pastor. That's a good idea. But the gospel is more than an ooey-gooey feeling that you have Jesus in your heart. The gospel is based on truth. The gospel depends on truth. And preaching the gospel always involves exposing the sin that makes the gospel necessary. And until we hear the bad news, we will never fully appreciate the good news. Some say, well, won't this kind of preaching offend someone? Truth always offends someone. Amen. Others might ask, well, won't we turn people away who need to hear our message? And that's possible. But the fear of running hypothetical people away is no reason to compromise the truth. No reason. Aren't you afraid we'll lose our tax exemption? I hope we don't lose our tax exemption. But in the end, there is nothing in the Bible about tax exemption, one way or the other. And if we ever lost our religious tax exemption, which could very possibly happen in our nation at some time, we'll be like the vast majority of other churches around the world that never had one in the first place. So let's return to the core question. Is the unborn baby really an individual human being? Consider this. From the moment of conception, the baby has an individual identity. The baby has its own set of genes and chromosomes. Before implantation, the baby's sex has been determined. At 19 days after conception, the eyes begin to develop. At 24 days, the heart begins beating. At 30 days, the unborn baby is 1/4 of an inch long, and yet it has a brain, eyes, ears, a mouth, kidneys, and a liver. At 35 days, his fingers are formed. At 40 days, brain waves began to be detected and recorded. In the 7th week after conception, the baby begins to move spontaneously. In the 10th week, the baby squints, swallows, and hiccups. He has fingerprints that will stay for him for the rest of his life. In the 12th week, the baby responds to touch and begins to suck his thumb. By the 4th month, his ears are functioning. He can hear his mother's voice for the very first time in the 4th month. By the 7th month, he can see, hear, taste, and touch. He recognizes his mother's voice when he hears it. By the 9th month, the baby weighs between 6 and 9 pounds. His heart pumps 300 gallons of blood a day. He is fully capable of life outside of the womb if he only gets the chance. There's one other passage of Scripture that we need to consider this morning. It is a passing reference by the Apostle Paul in Romans 1:31. I won't read it, but I just want to mention it to you. In this passage, Paul has given a long list of sins of those who have turned away from God. And just outlines them and lists them there. And as part of this list, he uses the Greek word. You have it in your notes, just hit on the screen. It's pronounced ostagos. Ostagos. Translated in the King James, it simply means without natural affection. Some other modern translations would use the word heartless. This was used in the first century. Ostagos was used in the first century for parents who, when their child was born with some type of handicap, deformity. There was something that just wasn't physically right about this baby, and they recognized that fact. And they would take that child and they would place it outside in the elements, in the wind and the rain and the cold. They would place it in the elements where the wild animals would come and feed upon that baby. Ostagos, without natural affection, heartless. And that's the word that the Apostle Paul uses in this passage. Such cruelty is not natural. To treat your child with unconcern reveals that you are ostagos, Paul would say. And seen in that light, abortion is not just another sin. It is a mark of a depraved and godless society. I've come to one simple conclusion. Abortion is wrong because it is wrong to kill babies. It is as simple and as profound as that. I know no other conclusion to come to that is consistent with the Christian faith. We know the truth, but what will we do with the truth? I remind you of the words of Dante, who wrote, "The hottest places in hell reserved for those who in times of great moral crisis maintain their neutrality." This is no time for neutrality. This is no time for a silent witness. This is no time to turn and look the other way. Abortion is wrong because it is wrong to kill babies. It's as simple as that. And in a day when the killing of babies has become not only tolerated but accepted, in a day when political candidates across the political spectrum not only support abortion, but they also wear it as a badge of honor that they support the legalized killing of babies, the Church of Jesus Christ must speak out. We must let our voice be heard. We must speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And so at this point, I will tell you my own personal conviction, in case you don't know it already. I will not knowingly vote for any person who openly supports the legalized killing of the unborn. I will not support them. As far as I am concerned, such a person is disqualified from public office on any level. To me, it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It is an issue of the fundamental respect for human life. And in putting the matter this way, I cannot and I will not compel upon your conscience. You must make up your own mind how you feel. But on this subject, I've made up my mind a long time ago. Having said that, I know that inside the evangelical church, there are many people who, for whatever reason, have mixed feelings on this subject. We may find it easy to take the I'm against abortion, but I don't want to impose my views on any one point of view. But let's consider how that logic would play out in another moral area. How would you respond to a political candidate who said one of these things? I'm against slavery, but I don't think we should make it illegal. How would you respond to that person? Or what if they said, I'm against slavery, but I'm not offended if you own a few slaves? Or how would you respond if they said, I'm against slavery, but other issues are more important than the issue of slavery? And what if that person said one of those statements and then added, but I'm pro-life? I'm I don't want to deal with the issue of slavery. You can have some slaves, and I don't think it should be illegal, but I'm pro-life. Would that disqualify that person from my vote? Absolutely would disqualify my person from that vote. Absolutely. Support for slavery is a disqualifying issue, and it doesn't matter how good your other positions might be. And I feel the same way about abortion. I will not vote for a person who truly believes that it is permissible to legally kill the unborn. In John 10:10, Jesus said this, "The thief comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full," or the King James, "to have it more abundantly." And who is this thief that Jesus talked about? The thief is the devil himself. The devil comes to take life. Jesus said, "I come to give life." Let's be clear about this. Abortion comes from hell. It is the work of the devil himself. And those who profit from this dirty business are doing the devil's work for him. Someday, they will have to answer to God for the innocent lives they have taken. And the politicians who promote it in the name of choice and freedom, in my opinion, have joined forces with Satan. I know that's tough, isn't it? Well, let's get back to our text where God commands us to choose life. Choose life. This is a command for communities and individuals and churches and states and nations. On Tuesday, millions of Americans will go to the polls and vote. What should we do? I've talked to many of you, and I have not tried to persuade you one way or the other. And you haven't tried to persuade me one way or the other. And many of you say the same thing over and over again. I don't like either one of them. I don't like either choice. What should we do? What should I do? How do I vote? What should I do? Well, do what we've already told you to do. For goodness sake, pray for God to guide the American people. And do what God said to do. Choose life in the leaders that we elect. That's all you have to do. Second, make sure you vote. And third, get involved in helping others. There are many wonderful organizations in the Roanoke Valley that deal with this issue. You can get involved in a crisis pregnancy center. You can help those women who are struggling with this. Is a real issue they're struggling with. They're trying to make this choice. They're trying to figure out what to do. Do I abort this child? Do I keep this child? Do I put this child up for adoption? What are my options? What can I do? And they need to know there's more options than just going to a clinic and aborting this child. There's more options out there. And maybe God will speak to you and say, you know what? You could help these women. You could help these young mothers. You could get involved in this and try to help them with this. Maybe you could consider adopting an unwanted child, someone who really can't keep this child, can't afford to have this child, cannot give this child the life they deserve. And maybe God's been dealing with you about adoption. Maybe you could do as some of the other folks in our congregation have already done. They've taken in foster children, and they fostered those children. They loved on them. No, they're not theirs biologically, but they have taken those kids from bad situations and have loved them and cared for them and have tried to help make their life better. You see, in our fight for life, we must do more than merely be against abortion. We must get involved in helping the hurting wherever we find them. It's more than carrying a picket sign around saying against abortion and against abortion. It's more than slapping a nasty picture of it on the sign and walking around with it. No. Okay, some people deal with it that way, but you know what? Let's just not be against it, but now let's go help somebody who's trying to institute some change in this area, and let's get involved in that change. And rather than just being against something, let's try to help the hurting where we find them. Let me wrap up with a final word. Abortion is not the unpardonable sin. It may sound as if I think that it is, but I don't believe that. Abortion is sin, I believe, because it's taking the innocent life. But it is not the worst sin, and it is not the unpardonable sin. And nowhere is it singled out in the Bible for special treatment. And nowhere is Romans 3:23 more needed than in the discussion over abortion. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. You know what that means? That applies to you whether you've had an abortion or you've never had an abortion. That applies to you whether you're male or whether you're female. It applies to all of us equally in this room today. For all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Here's some good news or maybe some bad news. I don't know how you want to look at it. We're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. All of us. I am aware that there may be women who are in our own church who may have had an abortion. And after a sermon like this, you may wonder how they feel about you and how this church feels about you. Here's my answer. We love you, and we are glad that you're part of our family, and we do not and we will not condemn you for what you've done in your past. It is not our job to condemn you for what you've done in your past. Not our job at all. If we condemned everybody for everything they did in their past, we'd be doing nothing but condemning people all the time. We spend their whole time condemning people. And there are people in churches like that. They just condemn all the time. But no, we don't condemn you for that. We love you and we appreciate you and we're glad that you're here with us if you fall into that category. See, in the end, we're all driven to the cross of Jesus Christ. And at the ground, around the foot of the cross, the ground is level. We're all on the same level there, around the cross. Nobody's exalted, nobody's lower. We're all level around the cross. We all need Jesus. We all need a Savior. We all need forgiveness. We all need someone to love us and to care about us. And that is what we find at the foot of the cross. And as you stand at the cross, you simply say, Father, forgive me. I've sinned. You know what your Father says back to you? You are forgiven. That's all it says. You are forgiven. But my past, you're forgiven. But these folks, they keep telling me what I was, but you're forgiven. My family will never let me live it down, but you're forgiven. I've covered it at the cross for you. Doesn't matter what your past is. It doesn't matter what you have or have not done. It doesn't matter where you've been. You are forgiven right there, right now, in a moment at the cross. Now maybe you're here today and you're struggling with the guilt of abortion. Or maybe you know somebody that's struggling with this issue in your own life. Here's some good news for you or for them. God still loves you. And He still loves them. And if there's somebody in your life that you know has gone through this, God can strategically use you and He can strategically place you in their life to help them and minister the love of God to them through that situation and through that pain. And they need to know the love of God in their life. Or maybe you're here and you're struggling with something else that you're guilty about. You're struggling with. Listen, God has never stopped loving you, and He never will. I've made this statement dozens of times over the last 13 years. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more, and there's nothing you can do to make Him love you less. Nothing. He just loves you. Isn't that amazing? He just loves me. No matter what, He just loves me. No matter how many times I mess up, He just loves me. No matter how many mistakes I make, He just loves me. No matter what my past looks like, He just loves me. And I can't change that. No matter what I do, He'll never love me any less, and He'll never love me any more. He just loves me. Lights are on, the Father's house, and He's standing at the door, and He just waits for us to come to Him, whatever our needs are today.